Here we see a map that was constructed by a person out in the field taking measurements of where they were as well as what elevation they were at. So for example, here they were standing at 30 feet above sea level, and the rest of the points were measured in a similar way. What we want to do is draw contour lines representing these lines of equal elevation. So for this one, I know I'm going to use a 10-foot contour interval. I'm going to start with the 40-foot contour line. And I see several 40s here, so that's just why I decided to pick that one. And so what I want to do and say, I have a 40 measurement here, and then between 45 and 30, I know that there will be a 40 right about here, so closer to the 45 and the 30, so I put a dot. I can also go between 51 and 23 and say that it's going to appear right about here. Between 30 and 58, a little closer to the 30. Between 41 and 30, right, I'd have 30, 31, 32, all the way to 40 would be just on this side of that. Now, one of the things we notated in the directions is that this line here marks a stream. So we know that this is going to be a low spot, which means our contour is going to go down to the stream and then pop back out. So let me go ahead and draw this line in. I'm going to connect those dots that I made, and then I'm going to intersect that stream. So what do we do on the other side? Let's look and see. We have a 31 here and a 50 here, so a 40 will appear at about the halfway point. Between 31 and 45, I'll be closer to the 45. The 40 is here. Between 20 and 50, I'm going to be about here. And between 20 and 43, I'm going to be at about this point here. So now I take this point at the low spot of the stream and then connect that back out here. And remember, we talked about in the course materials that where you have valleys, which a stream would occupy, you're going to get this kind of V shape. So now let's do the 30-foot contour interval, or 30-foot contour. So here's my 30. If I go between 45 and 23, I would be about here. Here's another 30, so I'm going to take that line up to here and hit that low spot. And remember, I always want to make it go off of the page because this isn't a magical barrier. It would extend down here, the landscape, but we're just cutting it off there as a point of the extent of the map. So now when I look on the other side, my 30 would be right on this side of the 31. And if I were to pick between 40 and 20, I might put one in here. And so then I would take this line down through those points and then once again off of the map. All right, so now let's do our 20-foot. And this one gets a little bit funny because we don't have a lot of data in here. So I'm actually going to start on this side here. I only have this 20-foot mark. So I would just take this knowing I'm going to come to this V shape and go through the 20, and then I want to be on this side, the downward side, the stream side of the 23. So I put a dot there, and I would extend that out like that. And so now I might want to label these. So I might label this a 20, and a 30, and a 40. So let's continue. Let's do the 50-foot line. So between 45 and 61, I would go here. Between 51 and 45, I would come about there for my 50-foot line. Between 58 and 41, I'm going to end up about here. And then once again, I can draw my line. And it's just going to go off the top there. If I go on the right side of this, I would have a 50 up in here. Between 60 and 45, I might land something like this. Between 45 and 60, right here. Between 40 and 70, I'm going to be way on this side. There's another 50, and something like that, between the 43 and 58. And then I would just join the lines up, just like so. So then we'll go to 60. Here's a 60. I'm going to go through these pretty quickly, since that's pretty repetitious. Come down through here. Whoops. It's okay, made a little mistake, but we can just come off the side there. And I'm going to finish this side of the map. So with my 70, I would want to go between 61 and 72 right there. And I would do something like this. And I've got my 80 mark, probably something like that, just on this right side of this 81. And so I would label a 50, and a 60, and a 70, and an 80. Okay. So let's look at the right side of the map. Things here get a little more interesting. You're going to see that we don't just go straight up through. We've got some 60s and 50s popping back up over here. So let's see what's going on there. So we're at our 50-foot contour here. So now let's do our 60-foot. And what you'll notice is I can connect these two, right? 60 and 60. I would come between 70 and 50 here. But this is where it gets a little bit tricky. I'm not going to go just straight off the page because I've got these 50s sitting down in here. So let's look and see what's going on. Between 58 and 75, I'm going to end closer to the 58, something like that. And then what I want to do is I want to stay on this side of the 56, right? Because I would have a 60 would be between 56 and 70, something like this. So I might come in like swoop down here, I'm going to hit here, and then if I look back over, I'm going to come off the map there and stay on the down side of the 70. I wouldn't want to swoop back up because we have a 75 and a 70, and 60 doesn't exist between those points. So it must go off the map there. And so this would be my 60-foot contour. So let's look at our 70. Between 60 and 74, I'd put the dot here, 60 and 81 here. So let me connect those to start that. So now I've got to decide between 75 and 60, right? I would put it about here. So I can continue to connect that. And then I'm going to swoop down to catch my 70. But I wouldn't want to go completely off the map necessarily. I want to pick up this other 70. So you have a couple choices here. You can swing it off the map and then come back on, or you could take a hard cut that way. I'm going to choose just to kind of cut back through there. Right, we don't have enough data here to tell us if it goes off and comes back on, or if we just swoop there. Between 91 and 65, I would end up about here. Between 72 and 55, about here, so that I can go ahead and swing my contours about right there. All right, so that's my 70-foot. So now I can finish the outside over here. I'm going to pick up my 60-foot line. So between 65 and 55, it would be in the middle. Between 55 and 72, it's going to be about here. So once again, I can pick up a line that starts off the page and ends off the page there. And then finally, that would be, so this is my 60-foot line. And then between 45 and 55, of course, I would have a 50, so I would just swing that right through the middle. And so these don't have to be perfect, it's just a general idea. The more points that you have, the more accurate it is. But for this exercise, just getting the general landscape is great. So we've got this space in the middle to fill in. So we have 60, 70, we need to pick up our 80-foot contour. So between 74 and 81, it would be right around there. Between 91 and 70, it would be about here. And so, and it would be on the right side of the 74. We don't know exactly where, so I'm just going to kind of pick a spot that falls in line with these other points. And I'm going to come in something like this and say, okay, between 75 and 70, we wouldn't have an 80 there. So it's got to swoop down, not get to the 75 or 70, and then swoop back up between 72 and 91. So between 72 and 91, I would place it right around there. And so now I can swoop back up, and that would be my 80-foot line. And then my last one would be a 90, so between 81 and 91, it would be right around here. And I want it to come around the 91, right? So I'm going to come down through here, pick up that dot, and then I need it to be between the 80-foot line and the 91 point. So I would just come in something like this, and then swoop right back out and label that a 90. So there's a couple things to note here. We already knew that we had a stream here because that was given to you in the directions. I do want to highlight that to make it a little more obvious. So I'm going to use this little blue marker to say, okay, here's my stream. And if we remember from the rules of contour lines, there will be a V shape that you see here. And it makes sense because if you look at the values, they're decreasing as they approach this line here. So we've got 40, 30, 20, we get down to the low spot, and then this would be 20, 30, 40 again. If it helps you, you might want to label the lines on the other side as well, or you can just use the tracing and say, okay, this is still the 20-foot contour. If we look at this kind of V, or kind of the way I drew, it's kind of more of a U shape. This could be potentially another stream, right? So let me put a little line here, just to mark the low spot, or what we're guessing might be a low spot. Let's just say something like that. But what we're going to find is as we move toward this line, we're going to be at 60, 70, 80, we get up to 90, so we're actually increasing. You'd be walking uphill. And then on the other side, you would be walking downhill. So that's telling us this is not a stream or a low valley spot, it's actually a ridge. And again, if you remember back when we talked about the rules of contour lines, ridges also produce kind of this V shape. It just depends on the direction they swing. So just look at the contours. Are you increasing toward that line, or are you decreasing in elevation toward that line? And that's your topo map.